Bear Nation, how we doing? This is your host Rob Napoli back again for another episode of the Bear Necessities podcast. Today, we have a great guest calling in, actually from Poland right now, as he's at an event, a conference. So he's doing this on the road. Alex Snivov. How's your last name
Svinov.
pronounced?
That's yeah. Hey there.
That's
Hey
close.
Rob. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
Alex Svinov.
awesome, Alex. What's how's Poland right now?
Oh, it's very very hot.
Is it really?
Yeah. It's hot summer. Everybody, ladies wearing almost nothing, so it's not
Yeah.
like not like US.
Yeah, it's very European hot summer. Love it. And so, what conference are you there for right now?
Well, it's not exactly a conference. It's the event that we're doing for developers to promote developers join our platform.
Awesome.
So
So it's an Insquad event. It's your company
yeah,
event. Awesome. Even
yeah.
cooler. Um, so for those that don't know, Alex is a serial entrepreneur. He's a 4-time founder. He's had one exit, one failure, as he likes to say, 3 successful businesses. He also is an angel investor in 10 plus startups right now. And currently, he is the CEO of a company called Insquad, which is building the future of work. And his passion is building high performance remote teams. He's a father of 3 and a Buddhist in his mind. So, Alex, thanks for joining. And we're really excited to chat with you today, specifically around a couple key things, right? The fact that you have founded so many different companies and you actually talk about like one exit, one failure, 3 successful business. So I want to kind of dig into what that means. But before we do, I think it's really interesting to how you got your start into entrepreneurship, right? So we were talking pre-show, for those that don't know, Alex, prior to 2008 in the crisis, was in investment banking. He was doing mergers and acquisition, and then everything changed at that time, and you started to get into the entrepreneurship world. So talk to me a little about like the investment banking side and how you got into that, and when you got to that point of feeling, as your words, hopeless after the crisis, like how did you kind of rebound and go into this different avenue that's taken you the last 10, 12 years, and you've seen some great success and lessons learned?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me here. It's a great to be. I think I'd probably want to start, with my beginning of my career. I actually a computer science graduate, so I was in, I tried to become a software developer. That was early 2000 and was .com times, and it didn't really work out to me because a software developer is somebody with a certain mindset. It's not only about your knowledge that you have, but of course I could write a code. I can still write code, but I cannot become a great developer. And I've seen so many guys around there doing great code, so it didn't feel like that. And then I went to investment banking because I'm good in numbers, in finance, and I spent maybe 10 years there. And at some point, I just felt like, well, I was pretty much in the midlife crisis. Right? Yeah, I was like 33, and I felt like I could do more. I could, not even maybe financial wise. I wasn't thinking a lot about money at that point, but I could do more rewarding stuff. I could do things that could really change lives, and software development came naturally because this is the other thing that I was very well aware of. And I also my previous career in finance also gave me a lot of insights into how real companies are run, and it kind of helped me overcome this you know general knowledge that you have to be genius to run a big company, right? The processes there are ideal. They're not, right? So I felt that I really want to do something, and that's when I gave myself a promise. Okay, I'm going to start a company every 2 years, and to this date, I think I'm pretty close to that promise.
That's awesome. It's really, I think there's a lot there, right? Like everyone wants to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and it's a long path to get there, and that's also a different experience than being a founder and a CEO of your own company being a CEO of a 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 100 million company are very different levels of involvement, very different levels of skills and things that you have to do. And so, as you're kind of going through that, understanding that there is more of an impact that you could make um, by doing your own thing and taking what you knew and taking what you learned in the investment banking world and mergers and acquisition, which I think when you're in that space, it's high powered, it's high touch, it's high intensity. You're learning a lot about companies. You get some really interesting things like the due diligence process. So you're starting to understand what makes companies that succeed tick because of your role there. And so getting to see that and then turn that as a CEO is pretty cool. So you talk about these different businesses you've grown. When you made that transition and started doing it, what were some of the things that, because you're like, I'm going to make this challenge and do this, what were some of the things that kind of like smacked you in the face? You're like, oh shit, I wasn't ready for this. Was there any big kind of oh shit moments starting your first company, or how did that first one kind of kick off and run for you?
Yeah, well, actually, I think the first company I founded was I got lucky, I think, because for whatever reason, it did really take off. And there was no like real challenges there because, a lot of things that like you rightfully mentioned, I had before. And then I kind of felt that, well, maybe I'm genius. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna start my next startup like in 2 years time, because in the first company things went really well. And I didn't really need to be there full time. It was like a venture capital base, right? So it was growing 20-30% a year. And right now it's a good great company. It's got like 15 million in revenues, and it's still growing. But it's not, it's not does not require any of my time at this point. And then I started a next startup, and there, boom, I got smacked. Right, I did, because I thought that I'm genius now. I can do whatever whatever I want, and it was a complete disaster. I mean, I didn't work on a team as persistently as I should have. I did not think about my co-founder. I did not check the product market fit. And the worst of all, I was doing business with government, and never again I'm gonna get into that. So that's where what really smacked me at that point, at that time.
So, as you had that first one that you used the word luck, right? And I think you said something really interesting to me off camera about there's a bit of luck to being a startup founder, and that has a little bit to do with it. And so, tell me, kind of share with me, like how, what it. You made a really good point about it, right? So, it's kind of tell me like what your vision on luck as a founder and what it means to a startup.
Yeah, I think luck is a very controversial word, because obviously, don't get me wrong. You cannot just do something great just out of pure luck. I think it always like, and you can. It's not only about startups. If you want to become a great athlete, you can have a good. You are lucky to get a great body, but a lot of people get a great body and then they drink beer or they don't exercise, whatever. So I think that it's important to me. Luck is as the phenomena is important in a sense that when you're doing something, you really gotta believe in it, right? And it's when you're starting a startup, it's always a question. There is a million things that can go wrong. Typically I put a plan, and I'm certain that everything will go wrong. But I have a plan, but everything will go wrong, right? So luck in this sense is something that I think gives me some sense of that things are going to turn right ultimately, because uh, a lot of times, and I've been in this situation for many times, when you think there is no sales, or there are very little sales, there is a problem with the product, there's a problem with the team, and you're like, if you and they this is all so aggravating, and when you like put this all together, it's like, oh no, I want to give up. And at this point you should just breathe out and you think a little bit, that things may change immediately very fast, and this is where I think luck comes along. So you do all the things right, but for some reason it didn't work out. Well, maybe tomorrow it will, so try again. So luck is something that motivates me, wake up every morning and try to do it again and again, maybe change a little bit what I do, but still, yeah, carry on. So this is what it is.
So I love that because there is a quote that um, was all around our high school, and what our coach would always say is, luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? And so, well, I think that's valid, right? You have to be prepared for the opportunity. That's where people get really lucky. There's also this kind of random element to luck that if you have belief, if you are doing the right things, you're putting one foot in front of the other, that that happens sometimes, and you can't rely on it. You can all you can do is just hope for the best and go after it. But those that tend to be super lucky are those that tend to have high belief in themselves, high belief in what they're doing. They tend to prepare hard for what they're doing. So when those kind of random opportunities happen, they're ready to step through and take that. And I think, when we look at it that way, everybody, like, there's people out in the world that are lucky, there's people that are unlucky, but you can manufacture some of your luck, but you can't rely on it. What you could do is focus in it. So I love that kind of attitude on that. And I really think that, timing with startups, is you kind of, I've talked about, is timing is everything, right?
Oh yeah,
And sometimes you
big
can have
time.
the right product at the wrong time. You can have the wrong product at the right time, and there's nothing else in the market, so your product takes off, and then you can pivot. There's so many things that kind of happen with timing, and it's a bit of luck, right? And so this is where knowing what to do and when to do it.
Yeah, actually, I really love the way this manufacture your own luck, because and exactly, I had at one of my startups I had the wrong product but at the right time in the market, and because the market was ready, even my product, which was not exactly solving the problem, it was like solving part of it. It was still pain in the ass to use, but there was nothing better than that, and it really took off. And then in 2 years time we refactored the product, we've improved it, and then it really took off second time.
See, that's how it goes, right? And then I think that the other thing that I thought was really interesting, right, is your first company, you kind of struck gold and did well. Your second company, you talked about you got smacked because you didn't really validate the market, you didn't listen to your customers, and so kind of sharing that there too. When you think about companies three and now four, what did you do differently as you moved on from the lessons from your, like, the failed experiment of the company? Like, what was, you kind of thought you were a genius after the first one. The second one smacked you down. What was the big thing you took into companies three and four from that experience that you feel has allowed you to become the entrepreneur and leader that you are today?
Yeah, thank you. Great question, because I think it cost me a lot of money to learn what I've learned, obviously, in a time and efforts. After my second failure, I wrote myself an email, and I made it very important, so it always in my mailbox, and I in a subject line, lessons learned from this startup. It was called Happy Lunch, and lessons learned from this startup. And then every time I'm looking at some new venture, not necessarily even at my startup, but when somebody comes along and says, "Hey, Alex, would you be interested to invest in this in this story?" I would always measure it against what I've learned there and my findings. So the few things that I'm looking at, for number one, is the sales and the customer, right? uh, do I believe that this customer really has this need, and why do I believe that, right? And if I'm starting my own startup, first thing I do is I don't hire anybody at all. I go and sell myself. I do the first sale, and after that, I hire somebody to help me. Of course, this probably wouldn't work, in the space where you have to invent a new formula, or you invent and I don't know, a meat from thin air or something like that. Of course, it wouldn't work with there, but in the spaces where I am in, I'm always capable of selling something even without you having product. Okay, you can say, sorry, I tried, whether it would work or not on you. Thank you. I see that there is a demand. I'm gonna go and make up the supply.
Well, I love this. I just want to pop in here because I love this because I'm big on this and I've talked about this a lot on this podcast. I believe that founders need to know how to sell first, even if it's not your natural thing. Because if you can't sell your idea or your product, how the even like to the market, or let alone how do you sell to an investor, right? How can you sell yourself like, hey, this is going to be the next big thing, and you should give me, 100,000, 200,000, $1 million to go build this if you can't sell it to anybody? So you need to have that at some level, be able to sell the idea to others to validate it to the market. If you can't do that as a founder, I think that's a hard stop. So I love that you share that. And as an investor yourself, that's something you also look for in the companies you probably invest, and look at that team and their ability to what they have or who they have to sell
Oh,
to
absolutely.
and from.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second thing is, what I did wrong is the team, right? If you want to build something big, you gotta have co-founders. You alone cannot do it all, right? Even though I have a lot of expertise in marketing, in sales, writing code, I cannot be doing that. I don't have 240 hours a day. So and being able to sell this idea to your team is is actually quite as important as being able to sell it to anybody outside, right? And to your co-founders.
Yeah, and I love that because what do they say? If you want to go fast, do it alone. If you want to go far, do it with others, right? And so I think that, and again, this is what I think is really important about startups. You got to be fast early. Hence small team, keep it lean, do it by yourself. But once you validate, you need to start pulling others in to allow you to like go farther, because you can't do everything by yourself. It's just impossible.
Yeah, and yeah, that's true. And I think what was the and yeah, the third thing is that, well, this is my own thing. Don't try to do any business with government, because it's if you can only sell to the government, it's probably not a great idea. I wouldn't be interested in that. It's not that I, nothing against the government. Government is evil, but there is nothing better to distribute the wealth or take care of where people cannot take care of themselves. That's fine with me, but I don't want to be doing that.
Well, I feel yeah, and also I think people don't understand is selling to government agencies usually take 12 to 72 months through process, and then because of the nature of governments, people are leaving every year to 4 years. If you don't get in a certain time frame and somebody new takes over, you start from scratch all over again. So your sales cycle immediately becomes longer, and government's limited. You only have X amount of people you can go after versus a bigger market. And so that while there's a lot of money there, the market's small, it's very congested, and you have long, long sales cycles. So I'm with you on it. When people talk to me like we're selling to governments, I'm like, hey, good luck. I've done it in the past a little bit. I recruited for a government agency for a little bit, but like not my forte. It's its own beast, and I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I think it's also the fact that when you are out there on your own, and you've got a lot of options. You can try this and you can try that, and you can try to find your way. If you think, I'm going to be doing business with government, you're pretty much stuck on one way, and there's certain procedures that you have to install in your place. It may be fine if you're a large corporation and you can have a 5-year plan to get into the government procurement system and so on and so forth, but it's definitely not for as a startup venue that I would recommend, and that I would think. So these are the three things I wrote to myself an email, and I try to look at it every time opportunity comes along.
I love that. I think those are three great things. I think that we should all do that. I mean, for me, I have lessons that I've learned across my years, and I've like written them down and I've turned them into like different like mottos and things because it allows you to understand like this shit is hard. Building a startup, building a company is really fucking hard,
Oh
and
yeah.
to do that multiple times is even harder. I mean, the first one was like, hey, awesome, I'm a genius. Second one, like, holy shit, I'm not a genius. I learned some shit. Third and fourth. And so, we get to this point where you are today. You're building, you're now in your kind of fourth company. Which company, by the way, was the successful exit? Was that one, three?
And then number
Which
three.
number three? So
Yeah.
I quickly want to talk about that because I recently went through an exit this year. My business partner and I sold our U.S. go-to-market sales and service business. We were able to get acquired, and it was a really cool thing and a really unique process. So I just want to kind of dig into that. Like, what was that process like? Like, how did you build it to get acquired? Was it built to get acquired? Did someone just kind of randomly come to you? What was that experience like going through a
Well,
successful exit?
yeah, yeah. The company, it really has to do a lot with the process that the business was structured, and it's the platform to generate leads to the bank to for the banks. And this, by the way, from my past experience, I'm from Russia, and this was a startup that I did in Russia, and the way banks in Russia work, just like in the US, they are very slow to adapt to new technologies. So basically, what we did is something that every bank should have done themselves. We did a good sales engine that would allow the customer to easily fill in the form and get scored and receive an offer from a bank in like 5 seconds, right? And then we had to integrate this platform with 25 banks, and ultimately, this I'd say niche was like full of competitors. So at some point, I was like, I don't want to be spending a lot of time there anymore. And one of the banks was like, hey, we really like your technology. We want to actually run a bank on it because we want to, we'll take out our old technology and replace it with what you guys created. So it came in naturally, although there was a lot of bumps along the way, and the whole M&A process took about, I'd say, nine months.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, as you've kind of like had that successful exit, so you've had, good startups, you've had failed startups, you've had an exit. Now you're on currently with InSquad building, the future of remote work. How has all these experiences kind of changed the way that you look at this entrepreneurial journey? Or has it? Is it similar to what you've done in the past? Is this something a little bit different?
Well, one thing I can say for sure is that every startup is different. Because even though you may build the same product or similar product, but the time is different, your consumer is different, your market setting is different, your competitors are different, and this has a lot reflects a lot on the qualities that you need to bring into your startup to make it successful. But however, there are a few things that are they're very, very similar. Number one is I'm very, very careful of whom I think would be a good partner, co-founder for myself. So I would think not only about their qualities and their experience and their knowledge, but also their personal traits, how they handle the stress situations, because stress will be along the way. Things will go not according to the plan. So that is one thing. Another thing is, like I said, first I sold to my first customer, and that was way back then in early last year. I sold to my first customer, and then even started thinking about. I didn't have any product. I did it myself. I sold my first developer. I hired a recruiter to find the developer quickly, and that worked. And that kind of work, if you do a small scale, but it kind of worked. We need a platform to do it on a bigger scale. Yeah, and so this is probably the second, and the third thing I think, which is very important, is that to build something big, you really need to think big, right? You need to raise the bar because my last business, it was a success. It made revenue like $5 million a year, and but it still is like it's not a lot, right? I mean, if you want to build $100 million company, you have to think about the huge market, something great shift, and this is what I did. This is what I found through my past experience, with the remote work, with the not being able to find developers quickly. This I found that there is this huge opportunity that we're trying to capture and trying to help the other fellow startups.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say hiring quality software developers has been a struggle since I was in the industry back in 2011.
Yeah,
I started my career in software recruitment, and I was recruiting developers for Fortune 500, Forbes 100 companies. And so even back then, right, it was huge because there was something like, when it might be a little bit over, but it was something like there was like there's like 40,000 jobs or something like that, like jobs posted across all platforms, and only about 4,000 to 6,000 qualified candidates on the market. And it's like there's such a delta. And that was for Java, J2E at the time, right? And so as you kind of figure that out, and that was in the US, right? So for US
yeah,
market, not the global market, right? So it's like, okay, how do we find remote? And then the problem with remote or offshoring is how do you manage it, communication, standards, time of work, quality of work. And so if you can kind of create a platform, I do love how recruiting has come into it. There's like creating more platforms. I've seen a couple putting it into a platform where you kind of remove the need for it's like, let me email you a list of resumes and you get back and it gets lost and we forget. It's like, no, hey, like you can go click in, boom, 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 boom. Like you can kind of pass back and forth. And the more that we can create a true future of work with like really good communication, and we see this with freelance work all the time. How can we put that into an enterprise level platform? I think it's a really cool idea, and I'm excited to see because I've paid attention to this industry a lot, even though I haven't been in it since 2015. I've worked with a lot of companies in this space and talked to a lot of people, and I still have like that
yeah. The
passion for
heart is
that.
there.
Yeah. Well, I joke all the time, but I had this experience happening. So this was it's technically my third job out of college. I went to a small like recruiting firm doing like healthcare recruiting. It was like 4 months and it was out. Then I went to Wells Fargo and did loan processing for the HARP refi after that because I came out of college right after it all happened. So it all happened in 2008,
Uh-huh.
2009. We started recovering in 2010 when I came on the market, and we're like, oh shit, there's really not a lot of jobs on the market for new grads still because we're recovering from all this. And then I went into recruitment, and so I sat down for my first client meeting, and it was the director of IT applications for Nationwide Insurance.
Oh,
And we're at the coffee shop, and I was like, "Hey, do you want a cup of coffee?" He's like, "No, cool, sit down." He's like, "I really need some Java," and I was like, "What is this guy talking about?" So I just got up and grabbed a cup of coffee and gave it to him, and my boss's face went white as a sheet,
oh God.
and he started laughing. And so he was like, "All right, here's what." Like we went through the meeting, like we've worked with him before, but he's like, "Rob, I have a challenge for you. I want you to do a presentation on what Java is and J2E." So I went to the store and got Java J2E for Dummies. He also talked about Cold Fusion, so I got Cold Fusion for Dummies, and I showed him how Cold Fusion sits on the front end on top of Java on the back end. And after that, he became one of my best clients, and I did a lot of work with him. So I always have a soft spot for this industry because like I had a very real experience where I looked stupid and I had to like prove myself as a 23-year-old kid who didn't know shit.
Oh, that's a great
um,
story.
yeah. I know we're getting close to time, but I wanted to ask you this question. So as you're building this really cool future of work platform, the team you have in place, you're also a part of the Forbes Business Council. You're also a mentor and an investor for Alchemist Accelerator. And in a day and age where we are all doing multiple things and a lot of stuff, and for entrepreneurs, that my audience that listens, a big thing we always get is like, how do we manage all this stuff? Right? Like I'm a hustler. People always ask me how I do it. How do you manage it? Because you're trying to build a really cool, big company. You're right now in Poland hosting an event. You run these programs. You're an angel investor actively with 10 plus investments, and you write for the Forbes Business Council. So how do you balance out your time? Plus, you're a father, right? And you have your family. So how do you balance out your day and your week to be the person you need to be for all these different organizations and people in your life?
Well, yeah, I would start on a low note that I probably should be spending more time with my family than I do. That's that is I'm certain, and but that's I think that's the fate of any co-founder, because your startup is your baby, right? You wake up in the morning, hey, I got to write these couple of emails, right? You got to be obsessed. You gotta you know gotta give yourself to that. But the important point is that you have to put a list and prioritize. That's the only way you can succeed in doing multiple things. And you don't try to fit too many things in in a certain time, because they won't fit, right? If you think that you will fit five things, 5 calls in 2 hours, no, you won't. If you think that you can do two presentations and 10 sales calls and follow up with the 20 guys that you spoke in last week, no, you won't. And I think it's important to be honest with yourself, what capacities you do have and what capacities you do not have. And at the point when you are ready to scale, when you know that the product is good, and you're certain that this is the right niche that you should be pursuing, uh, just hire people and try to delegate everything that is non-essential to creating the most value to your customer. And this is again the reason why I'm certain the future of work is with the platforms like Insquad, is because hiring is not the value creation for any startup. Hiring results in building a product that is a value creation, and because of that, you can certainly outsource that. So my rule is outsource everything that is non essential. Leave three to four things you would do in any given day. And if you have like 20 sales calls and you think you're super busy and you're super productive, no, you're not, because it's not it doesn't work like that. So this is my rule.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really smart. I mean, I ran a outsourced sales as a service company for 3 years. It's the one that we exited because a lot of times when people enter a new market, they don't know what they don't know yet. And so, some of these things can be outsourced. And like, I think you made a great point, like bringing in the right co-founders and these things. The way you build a team in this kind of future of work is there's certain people that you need to build with you to offload responsibilities. And then there's a way to build the team to offload the work to get things done. And you can still value all of your team, whether they're the part of the core team or the outsourced team. You can still value that contribution. You can still create that culture. You can still have those moments of collaboration in different ways. And I think that as we adapt to, this remote world and the new future of work, as founders and as companies who are building culture and these things, 'cause the biggest thing I always get is like, well, I want to build a great culture. I want everyone to, but most people are working remote anyways. And like more people don't want to go back to the office than do. I'm a big fan of going back to an office. But I love that you can work from anywhere, right? So you have to kind of figure out like there's ways to build that. And like that's part of like the thing of being an entrepreneur is building the right systems and teams and people in place to do the things that you can't, to make it about the product, and that the product is giving value and serving your clients, because that's kind of like the win, right? So making sure you understand how you build. So I love that you kind of mentioned that, and it's a kind of big key thing for you and what you're building with InSquad.
Yeah, I just want to reflect a little bit, because I think a lot of people don't appreciate how important the processes are within the teams. How important it is to offload as much manual work to the processes and to technologies, because this is the only way to free up your mind to do things that really cannot be automated, and that are really value creative. And once you've done that, you got like half day free for doing whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, I love that you brought this up too, because this is something I was discussing the other day. Is as humans, we really don't multitask, right? We context switch really fast, but we don't really multitask. It's you're task, right? So people are like, oh, I'm a great multitasker. And really, probably you're not. You're just context. You're good at context switching. And if you don't figure out how to offload some of those things that could be offload, so that you don't have to context switch as much and you can like get things done, you're going to free up more time for you to be the most valuable version of yourself. And people are like, well, if I have more time free, what would I do with it? Well, as the founder of a company, you could be doing X, Y, and Z. Or you may need to find, as the founder or as the co-founder or as the CTO or as the CSO or as the COO, what can you do with that time to be the best version of yourself for you and your team and the company? And like, if we can get more teams to look at that and figure out how do we offload and processize and automate the manual stuff that makes us seem busy, right? Because we're on emails all day. Our job's not to be fucking writing emails all day, but it
Yeah,
takes 8 hours of our
absolutely.
day. That's not us being the best version of ourselves. And so I think it's really important for founders out there and anyone at any level. How do you become the best version of yourself? How do you create your processes, create your work so that you can be the best version, especially at that C level in an early stage startup? Because your job is building culture, your job is building a team, your job is building a product, your job is building a brand, your job is building all these things. And you have to be the best version of yourself to do that. And I find that so many people miss that. And that's what I love about part of the problem you're solving with InSquad is that, hey, we're creating a great platform so you can offload some of this stuff so that you can be the best version of yourself and have the best version of yourself available to your team and your
Yeah,
customers.
yeah, absolutely. And this is, when actually when we were hiring the second or the third developer to our team, we, uh, my team, my CTO, he did not fully appreciate the idea of what we're doing. But once he spent like half of his time interviewing, and with no results, and months, like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months pass by, he was like, I'm fully in it. I want technology, I want automation.
Yeah. I see. Sometimes it takes those experiences. Sometimes it takes those mistakes, right, to figure that out. But once you figure it out, you really start to see where you become the best version for yourself and your team. So, Alex, thank you so much for being on, for jumping on the call from Poland before you host your event later today. Where can my listeners find you? How can they learn more about you and InSquad and what you're building?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's great being here. And if you are a late seed or A/B round startup looking to scale with offshore developers, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and get a free consultation from me. I'm also advising on building remote teams, and my LinkedIn is Alex Svinov. That's AlexSvinov. I'll be happy to chat with you.
Awesome. I will make sure to have that in the show notes so you can easily click on his LinkedIn profile, find him, reach out to him, let him know where you heard him from, and get it going. Alex, thank you so much for being a part of today's episode. For all those out there in Bear Nation, make sure you like, subscribe, rate, review, do all those things to help the show out. Until next time, stay well and rise up. Bear Nation, thanks for listening to the Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review.